What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Barbershop. I am Jeremy, here hosting yet again another episode where I would love to start off celebrating and enjoying it was a great day today, wasn't it not? If you're out here in the Midwest, you may know what I'm talking about. It's gorgeous blue skies. Who cares what happened with CERN? Just because Chick-fil-A now has a K in the name, it seems all right with me. Today I've got a couple of different things I want to talk about. For starters, I would like to give a shout out to Angry Orchard Angry Orchard Hard Cider. Again, it's apples. We all know what's going on. Tomato, tomato. Or in my case, potato, patata. So, Angry Orchard not only has their regular crisp apple, their green apple, rosé, and a magnitude of other ciders. They have a limited series, not necessarily limited, but they're much more of a special occasion type cider. They come in a variety of, at minimum, 3, and if you're lucky enough to find the 4th one, good on you. But they have the Iceman, the Strawman, the Muse, and Walden Hollow. Real quick rundown, the Iceman is a Quebec-style cider where the fruit originally starts off being frozen before the harvest season, and that makes the flavor come across more of a mixture of some dried fruit and a burnt toffee. So, if any of you all are curious, burning toffee helps to pull in a bitter sweetness that lingers on the tongue. It's a caramelizing basic is what's going on. The Strawman is a very dry beverage. It's more of a wine than a beer, honestly. And if you are into a sweeter wine or a sweeter aroma and flavor, this may not be the beverage for you. It's much more tart instead. And if the flavor alone doesn't get you in that Halloween feels, then that orange liquid and that scarecrow on the bottle really should. The Muse is sweet up front with a bit of a sweetness, probably from the bittersweet apples that is used for the brewing process out of a French oak barrel. The finish has a vanilla aroma and flavoring with a little bit of a clove that tends to linger in the mouth. It's dry, but not Strawman dry. Brew is sparkling, making it carbonated, and it is quite the beverage for any kind of celebration and any festive season. Now, the 4th one, that's more of the rarest that I have been able to run across, was called the Walden Hollow. It's an annual vintage made from Cider Master's choice picks of that season's heirloom apples out in New York. Most recent that I discovered, being 2016, is extremely appley, very pungent in its aroma, with a deep butterscotch feel. There's a little bit of almond in there as well. So the Cider Masters attempted to make that brew using a wild fermentation method. That means that they pressed the apples directly into the aging barrel and allowed it to ferment from there. So there's no transferring. That can make things kind of sour and stale and kind of thing in the feel. But I think that the people at Angry Orchard were right on the nose and right with the money, being able to try and keep all of that funk out of the Walden Hollow. If you get a chance, find them locally the best you can. Again, most of these are probably going to be seasonal. Otherwise, of course, you can always go to angryorchard.com, look them up online. You can go through like Drizzly, any kind of an alcohol purchasing website, as long as you're 21, and you can go from there. So, today's meat and potatoes of what I'm excited to talk about is, do y'all know that presidents smoke weed? Some of them did. Starting with our very first one, that's right, George Dubs, the founding father of our country. He actually farmed hemp itself. For those of you that don't know, hemp is the overall byproduct in which that the original plant that marijuana comes from is hemp. Now, primarily, that would be a strain of hemp marijuana that does not consist of any real high level of THC. Now, during the overall farming process of hemp, you are still going to have usually a male strain of the hemp of the plant that's actually growing, that's blossoming, and every 3 weeks to a month, you need to remove that so it doesn't taint the remainder of the batch that is growing, the remainder of the bloom. And when old Georgie Dubs did that, he pulled all of his male hemp that had roughly a much higher THC content than normal, and instead of getting rid of it, they would smoke it. as it was much more relatively ready than tobacco. Moving on to President number 3, legitimately Thomas Jefferson. He also farmed hemp, and at the time of his presidency had went through an ambassadorship in France. And in France, it was a big deal to turn marijuana into hash. Exactly what that is, I don't honestly know. I am not a marijuana user myself, and I don't actually know what hash is in comparison to the plant or into edibles. I'm assuming it's probably some form of an edible. Nevertheless, hash itself was real big in France, and seeds were being smuggled in through Jefferson directly from China during his French ambassadorship. And he was once quoted as saying, "Some of my finest hours have been spent sitting on my back veranda, smoking hemp and observing as far as my eyes can see." Now, all of this information is coming directly from hightimes.com. I trust them in general. I believe that they have been around for quite a long time. I know they have done a lot of talks, interviews with Snoop D-O-double-G himself, and any publication that has his stamp of approval more than likely knows what they're talking about. The next one I want to talk about is our 4th president, James Madison. He is known as the father of the Constitution and claimed that hemp gave him the insight to create new democratic nation. Now, just to double back about Thomas Jefferson, something that I thought was very entertaining and funny is a quick little tidbit for all of you who are historical nerds, dorks, whatever you want to call it. I myself will accept being a nerd of any kind. But Thomas Jefferson, being the 3rd president, succeeded in pass to the 2nd president, John Adams. Both of these people, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, worked very well hand in hand when it comes to running the country. As our 2nd president, John Adams had Thomas Jefferson as his VP. And they truly, outside of the office, hated each other. They had different presidenting styles, they had different ideas in which direction the country needed to go, so on and so forth. And I believe it was Adams's last words on his deathbed were, "Damn, Jefferson lives." Little did he know that Thomas Jefferson had died roughly 2 hours before John Adams did on the same day. That's a great little tidbit. It's a good little giggle. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If not, well, you know what? This is free entertainment, so you're welcome. Continuing up on the list, a additional president that I want to talk about who did smoke marijuana was Franklin Pierce. He was one of 3 military men at the time to have become president who actually really loved puffing the ganja back in the days when he was fighting as a actual soldier in the Mexican-American War. He apparently once wrote a letter to his family stating that smoking marijuana was the only good thing about war. And being a veteran myself, I've heard plenty of stories from gentlemen that have been deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, where they would fly over fields of just weed. Fields, miles of marijuana. Apparently very rampant in those countries. What the deal is, I don't know. I did not go. I did not deploy. Nevertheless, apparently our soldiers, our boys in green, or whatever color they may be wearing, tan, digicam, you name it, if they get an opportunity to puff pass to the left, you know what? I think they've earned it. And that's just coming from me. Nevertheless, JFK was a big marijuana user back in the day, as he had fairly intense pain, if I remember right. He also, at one point, was having a little get-together in the 60s with Jim Truitt and Mary Meyer. They were all just out puffing it around, puffing and passing. And the president apparently had blown through 3 of 6 joints that Mary Meyer herself had brought to him, and believing that there was no effect on him. Until apparently he closed his eyes, refusing a fourth, and just went off on one of the first stoner hits blunt memes, stating, "What if the Russians did something right now?" That can only be a terror that hardly any of us will really get an opportunity to experience. I believe the next president that I need to discuss is old Bill Clinton, and how he did have sexual relations with that woman. I believe while he was in England, he'd experimented with marijuana a time or two. Apparently didn't really like it. However, try everything once, right? In true Clinton fashion, he probably was not telling the truth. It is believed that Bill actually has an affinity for pop brownies. So just because he stated that experimenting did not exactly state if he had eaten it, smoked it, so on and so forth, apparently you never know with the Clintons on what exactly is being said. Now, this is not to be a political podcast. However, these are all just jokes, folks. Enjoy what sticks to the wall, and if spaghetti's not done, put it back in the pot. It is also believed that George W. Bush did, in fact, hit the bong once or twice back in the day. He had told his biographer, Douglas Weed, jokes, pronouncing W-E-A-D from Douglas Weed as weed, he wouldn't want to answer any marijuana questions because he doesn't want some little kid doing what he had done in the past. So I think Family Guy may have missed the mark on all of the alcohol jokes involving George W. Nevertheless, jokes on jokes, folks. That's what this whole podcast is for. Enjoy it. And the most current and most recent president, Barack Obama, to have smoked marijuana, was once stated commenting on his youth in Hawaii, saying, "When I was a kid, I inhaled frequently," which was the point. Now, I can't do a Obama accent. However, I think it would have been a little bit funnier stated in his manner. There's one last tidbit way back in the beginning that apparently a couple of these presidents claimed to have back pain, such as JFK, and therefore the point of the marijuana was to help him with his pain relief. Same with George Washington. Everyone knows the famous joke of Washington's wooden teeth. That is incorrect. He had hippopotamus teeth. Wooden teeth never would have made any sense. Wood is porous. The mouth is an open wound that is perpetually wet, and therefore would have been a terrible place to put wood. Jokes. Again, if you're above 18, 21, so on and so forth, if you know what I'm saying, enjoy the laughter. But in fact, instead of wooden teeth, George Washington had hippopotamus ivory. So bone, teeth, you name it, coming from hippopotamus was what is in his mouth, which is why sincerely I truly don't believe are any historical documented paintings of him smiling. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the giggles. I hope you enjoyed the jokes. If you get an opportunity, please get a hold of some Angry Orchard, no matter what it is. If it's a hard cider, if it's a green cider, if it's a crisp apple, or a rosé, or any of their summer packs, because they also have tropical flavors out there, especially for this hot, humid summertime here in the Midwest. Enjoy. If you are 420 friendly, enjoy it. Have yourself a good old time every day at 420. Just enjoy your life. Do what you need to do to be happy, especially in these trying times with gas prices, wars, and just perpetual inflation and a crashing job market and a terrible economy. However, here at the barbershop, as long as the lights are on and there's beer in the fridge, you will have a barbershop.